Nigeria on the edge, the alarming wave of kidnappings, terror threats, and international pressure. Nigeria is once again facing one of its most frightening moments in recent history. Across several regions of the country, communities are living in fear as a series of disturbing security incidents unfold, shaking the nation to its core and drawing serious attention from the international community. What began as scattered reports quickly turned into a terrifying pattern that many Nigerians can no longer ignore. A wave of abductions that has shattered communities. This week, shocking intelligence reports and disturbing videos began circulating online, revealing a deeply troubling reality. Suspected members of the Boko Haram extremist group reportedly carried out large-scale abductions in several communities, leaving entire villages devastated. According to emerging reports, well over 100 women and children were taken captive in a coordinated raid that struck without warning. The attack reportedly occurred in the Bogu local government area of Niger State, where armed extremists stormed multiple villages in the middle of the night. Residents say the attackers moved quickly and ruthlessly. Homes were broken into. Families were separated. Mothers watched helplessly as their children were dragged away. Elderly villagers fled into nearby bushes while gunshots echoed through the darkness. But the destruction did not stop there. Local primary health centers were looted. Essential medical supplies were stolen. Buildings were vandalized and destroyed, leaving communities not only traumatized but also without access to basic healthcare services. For many residents, it felt like their entire world collapsed overnight. The painful reality of school kidnappings. Even more heartbreaking is the growing trend of school abductions that continues to plague the country. Nigeria is still recovering from several recent kidnappings involving school children, where hundreds of young students were taken from their classrooms and held captive by armed groups. In many of these cases, families and local authorities have been forced into desperate negotiations with kidnappers, sometimes raising millions of naira in ransom payments just to secure the freedom of innocent children. Imagine the horror of parents waiting endlessly for news about their sons and daughters. Imagine a child waking up in captivity, unsure if they will ever return home. This is the painful reality that thousands of families across Nigeria are facing today. Extremist groups expanding beyond the northeast. For years, Boko Haram and other insurgent groups were largely concentrated in the northeastern region of the country. But something dangerous is happening. Security analysts now warn that these armed groups are expanding their operations far beyond their traditional strongholds, pushing deeper into central regions of Nigeria. This shift is creating an enormous protection crisis. Communities that once believed they were safe are suddenly finding themselves on the front line of terror. Farmers are afraid to go to their fields. Traders are scared to travel between towns. Families go to sleep every night wondering if their village could be the next target. A new threat from ISWAP. As if the mass kidnappings were not alarming enough, another dangerous development has surfaced. The Islamic State West Africa Province, commonly known as ISWAP, has launched what many observers describe as a chilling and highly targeted campaign against Christian communities in parts of northern and central Nigeria. Using their propaganda networks and online channels, ISWAP commanders reportedly issued a harsh ultimatum directed at Christians living in those regions. Their message was brutal and uncompromising. They demanded that Christians must convert to Islam, pay a heavy subjugation tax, or face severe consequences. For many Nigerians, this ultimatum has sparked widespread outrage and deep concern. And unfortunately, it did not remain an online threat. Attacks on villages and farming communities. In recent weeks, several attacks have been reported in communities across Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states. According to multiple reports, armed fighters launched coordinated assaults on villages, targeting civilians and destroying properties. Places of worship were burned. Homes were reduced to ashes. Entire families were forced to flee their communities with nothing but the clothes on their backs. In some of these attacks, dozens of people reportedly lost their lives simply because of their faith. The violence has triggered a new wave of displacement, with thousands of people abandoning their homes in search of safety. Refugee camps are becoming overcrowded, and humanitarian organizations warn that the crisis could worsen if the situation continues. Families forced into impossible choices. For many families trapped in these conflict zones, life has become a painful series of impossible decisions. Stay in their village and risk being attacked, or abandon everything they have worked for and start life again somewhere else. Some parents now send their children to live with relatives in safer regions. Others move into temporary shelters or internally displaced persons camps. Entire communities are being uprooted by fear. The international community begins to speak out. As the crisis deepens, global attention is beginning to focus more intensely on Nigeria. The United States government has now stepped into the conversation, issuing strong warnings and expressing serious concern about the situation. One of the loudest voices came from U.S. Representative Riley Moore, who publicly condemned the recent attacks and the ultimatum issued by ISWAP. In a powerful statement, Moore argued that the latest incidents provide clear evidence that some communities are being deliberately targeted. His message was direct. If anyone still doubted that religious communities in Nigeria were under threat, these events should end that debate. Diplomatic pressure mounts on Abuja. Statements like this are not just political commentary. They represent growing international pressure on Nigeria's leadership. The United States and other global partners are now urging the Nigerian government to intensify its efforts to protect vulnerable populations and restore stability in affected regions. There have even been discussions about increased military cooperation and intelligence support. For leaders in Abuja, this creates a difficult and delicate situation. On one side, they must deal with a complex internal insurgency that has lasted for more than a decade. On the other side, they are facing mounting pressure from powerful international allies who expect faster and stronger action. The government's response. The Nigerian government has repeatedly stated that extremist groups target people regardless of religion or background. Officials argue that terrorists attack communities primarily for strategic or economic reasons rather than religious motives. However, the recent ultimatums and the pattern of attacks have made that argument increasingly difficult to defend in the eyes of some international observers. The debate is growing louder, and the world is watching closely. A nation waiting for answers. Meanwhile, the human cost of the crisis continues to grow. More than 2 million Nigerians have already been displaced by insurgency and violent conflict over the years. Millions more live in constant fear. Fear of midnight raids. Fear of kidnappers. Fear of being targeted simply because of who they are. For many citizens, the biggest question now is painfully simple. Can the Nigerian government truly secure these regions and defeat these extremist groups once and for all? Or will international intervention eventually become unavoidable? The conversation continues. These are difficult questions, and they affect every Nigerian. Security, unity, and stability are not just political issues, they are matters of survival for millions of families. As the situation continues to unfold, one thing is certain. Nigeria stands at a critical moment in its history. The decisions made today could shape the future of the nation for generations to come. And the world is paying attention.